Welcome to the RIMA podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is actually a continuation of our webinar on advocacy in contemporary Singapore, where we dive into how people and communities are making things happen around the issues that they care about. So in our past webinars, or episodes as we call it, we explored advocacy in spaces like health, environment, Malay language and literature, and we also took a closer look at the Orang Laut community and how they want to preserve identity. So if you haven't checked those out, you can add them to your YouTube Watch Later playlist. Today we have Miss Fahima Farha and Dr. Shahril Salleh. And let's start with introductions. So Fahima, would you like to introduce yourself and what Roses of Peace does?
Sure. So thank you for having me here today. So I am Fahima. I've been part of Roses of Peace since 2016 now. What Roses of Peace does, we really started off as a ground-up initiative in 2012 as a reaction to global tensions, and over the years we've evolved, and I have evolved with the organization as well, and we started creating safe spaces for conversations, and now we are looking at capability building for young individuals. So there is a wide spectrum of things that we do. We did start off as an interfaith ground-up initiative, and we grew over the years. We became a registered entity, and now we look at social cohesion as a whole, so both interfaith and interracial harmony as well. So that's a little bit of Roses of Peace.
I have follow-up questions, but I think we can let Dr. Shahril introduce himself and what Vox does.
Okay, so hi, my name is Dr. Muhammad Shahril bin Muhammad Salleh. I like my friends to call me Shah. Most of my students and all that will call me, oh my god, he's coming. But anyway. But okay, so I wear multiple hats. I am a social scientist. One of the things I do is I'm also the artistic director and founder of Vox Camerata Limited. Vox Camerata is a center for advocacy, research, learning and practice for the performing arts and community building. So what we do is we use evidence-based approaches to kind of take a look at what are the things that we can do to bring people together, to kind of raise consciousness and awareness with regard to certain issues that are happening in Singapore and perhaps regionally and around the world as well. So Vox does all these things, all the small things and the big things as well.
So you've told us more about like what each of your organization does, right? But what was the impetus of, for example, Roses of Peace?
So we started in 2012, as I mentioned earlier, in response to incident that was happening in France, right? There was a hateful caricature of Prophet Muhammad, and a lot of people were very unhappy in the West, and with any kind of, with how connected we are in today's world, right? So there were also people unhappy in Singapore. So there was a friend of our founder who was so unhappy and said, why don't we conduct a sit-in protest in campus? He was still in university at that time. And he was like, hold up, we are in Singapore, we can't protest, right? You don't want to go to jail.
Correct.
So he said, why don't we do something more peaceful? And then was the idea where why didn't we give out roses attached to interfaith messages of peace? So we actually went out to public and we packed these roses ourselves. We detorn them, we sleeve them, we tie the roses, we write messages of peace. And on the postcard, there were quotations from different faiths: Islam, Buddhism, Christianity, Taoism, Sikhism. And I think the beauty of it is when you cover up the name of the faith leader and you read the quote, you actually don't know which faith tradition that comes from, right? So that is how universal the messages were. And that's really how we started, as a reaction to something that happened somewhere else, and we wanted to counter hate with love. And we went out to the public and we gave out roses in 2012. And in fact, at that point, there was no other organization that was doing something like that, right? So I think we had questions from the security department. They were like, what are you guys trying to do, And you are going out giving out messages from faith leaders, kind of thing. So at that point, because this scene was also quite nascent and there wasn't many players in the field as well, we didn't think it's going to be what it is 12 years later, that is today. But year after year, youths came back and said, when are we going to do it next year, right? When are we going to do it next year? And it really grew as an organization. So from just giving out roses, that's where we later on shifted to looking at various segments and various addressing various needs within the youth space as well.
Yeah. Is there any reason why it was roses and not other flowers?
Okay, so when you think about rose, what do you think, right?
Love.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so we wanted to spread the messages of peace, love, and harmony. And I think there's no better, uh, symbol to love than rose, right? That's what you
Okay.
give on a Valentine's Day, right?
Okay.
So I think that's why we chose rose as the symbol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How about for Vox Camerata? What was the turning point?
Okay, it starts from my own recognition of my own privilege because I've studied overseas, and I've had this opportunity to kind of see communities in action, living communities and communities of practice. I was so enamored by the sort of connections that the individuals have in choirs in Brisbane, in Canada, in the UK, where it's a community, it's a real community. It's, where a lot of the performing arts groups, especially if you're in school, a lot of it's just transactional. You go there, you practice, you perform, and then you leave. Sometimes you may have friends and all that, but the idea of celebrating the individual in the community is so um, it's so vibrant, especially when I was in like ensembles like the Brisbane Chamber Choir, where you know everybody by name, you know their family, you know their children, you know the name of the dog, the cat, yeah, the cow, yeah. So, but what also kind of got me to start Vox was I wanted to create a space where there is a lower barrier for participation. So as you know, where Singapore is concerned, a lot of the performing arts are very geared towards competitions, towards excellence. And there are a lot of people who would want to try to participate in the performing arts, but wouldn't, are sort of discouraged to do so because, especially where community ensembles are concerned, the barrier for acceptance is actually very, very high. You need to be able to have X amount of experiences in school.
Yep.
So we wanted to kind of like turn that on its head. So Vox started out as a non-audition choir. Everybody's welcome. But the flip side of the coin is we do good music together. And where choral music is concerned, there's a strange dichotomy for people who don't practice choral music. Oh, it's a lot of Christian music and all that. Sacred music is almost universal in a sense whereby we have our own manifestations of, like, for example, Buddhist Tibetan chanting, Dikir Barat, right? It's also another form of choral singing, choral music. What I wanted to do too was to kind of like open up the binary between just the sacred as in Christian, whereas there's a whole plethora of sacredness. And there's also the idea of the folk music. There's also kind of connected to spirituality. And then there's also the so-called circular music that is still also tied to this idea of belonging, self, and identity. So where I was concerned, choral music was an excellent vehicle for me to kind of like inculcate values, inculcate shared vision, and to build community. So that's where it started. Just a bit more for this. So in about 2020, just before COVID, because we've been doing a lot of these incubations, we've been doing a lot of these community fostering and all that, said, okay, maybe what we should do is we should kind of formalize this. So we decided at 2020, we're going to restructure ourselves as a Center for Advocacy, Research, Learning and Practice. And what we want to do is we can see how the performing arts can be used as an interventive tool for us to address issues, for us to bring people together. And that's where it started. Workshops, we've been doing the interfaith festivals such as the Sojourners, where we kind of highlight ethno-religious minorities in Singapore and to see what their cultural forms are. There's this thing there's this saying in bahasa, tak kenal maka tak cinta. Right, and we have all our neighbors, our friends, who have this rich tapestry of culture that we don't get to see. You would hardly be able to see the kirtan in Gurdwara, and it's so beautiful. In 2022, when we did the Sojourners Festival at VCH, when the Central Sikh board brought the kirtan group, they just sat down and they started singing. Everybody was just lost in time. It's just because everybody's just singing in unison with the instruments and all that. But there's a certain sense of come, listen, come, sing. So that sense of community it's manifest through that performance. So this is what we want to do. We want to kind of highlight the cultural forms to get people to come and experience it, see it, maybe try it out. Yeah.
Oh, just now you mentioned tak kenal maka tak cinta. For our non-Malay speaking viewers,
You
you wanna?
you cannot love what you don't know.
Okay.
Mm.
I mean, I can see how I can imagine how beautiful like the choral singing can be, but I can also like understand how it may be controversial. So like since we're on that topic, what are some of the challenges that you have faced when like trying to pitch choral singing or like whatever you do in Vox Camerata?
Um, I think I don't know. To be fair, I think a lot of Singaporeans who approach Vox and who approach me, they're very polite. So they don't. We don't talk about the I don't feel comfortable. But I can sense sometimes there is a sense of discomfort, and a lot of it also has to do with the imagination of what the art form is, as opposed to what it actually is.
Okay.
So sometimes when I talk to people who are Malay Muslims who are a little more conservative, and they said, "Oh, you're singing all these Christian songs and all that," I said, "It's not the only thing that we do. We do a whole plethora of things, and it's also about being able to appreciate someone's culture, being able to appreciate someone's identity formation, so to speak." So when we talk about like the idea of like Dike Barat and all that, and Dike Barat also interestingly has a bit of tension and disjunction there too, because there are some very conservative Muslims who think that that is actually has animistic root. One of the things I kind of put forward, and not to kind of push this very idea, is the fact that we also need to understand our own histories, to understand that we come from a whole genealogy of practices and all that. We shouldn't erase that part of us where we acknowledge that our cultural influences came from like the Srivijaya, came from the Majapahit, came from the Arab traders, came from the Chinese envoys and all that. So Nusantara itself is a sort of a liminal space and syncretic space. And these sort of things are also part of our culture and our heritage. That we don't practice it, it's still fine. But for us to excise it and say it's not us, it's actually a bit problematic. What I can say is just the advocation of tolerancy. Like, yes, okay, so you may not want to do it, that's fine. But let's not prevent other people from appreciating it or from seeing it. And where we are, it's not for us to kind of push, you must do it. It's these are the things that are available, come and see. Yeah, that's where we are coming from.
Okay. How about for Roses of Peace? Any like challenges that came to mind?
From the time that I joined in 2016, and that was when we also ventured into creating safe spaces for dialogue and conversations, I think the challenge is really how do you get those who are not on the table to be on the table, right? It is always easiest to reach out to people who are interested, but the topic on social cohesion or interfaith harmony is not just for those who are interested, right? I feel that it is something so core to our existence as a community, right? The moment we have social fissures, conflicts, then every other constructs will fall apart as well. So I think the biggest question is really how do we get those who are not on the table to be part of this conversation? How do we invite them? How do we access them? And how do we even create that slight interest in them to be part of this conversation, right? So, I mean, again, those interventions can come at varying levels. It can stop at an awareness level. It can go all the way into a capability building. Let's equip you to champion your own causes as well. So really, I think how do we intervene at how do you meet people at that stage of life that they are in as well? So I think these are the challenges that we still are navigating as well.
So it sounds very similar, like the approach is just to get people to be more open to seeing what interfaith is about, right? Something I haven't heard from you actually is how did you get into the interfaith space, like your personal journey? Because
So for myself, really was in university, right? So I went to all the mainstream schools, just uniform. And the moment I stepped into university, that's when I wear my hijab. And my friends started questioning me, like, so I'm a Tamil Muslim. So the moment I wear a hijab, now I'm visibly a person of faith, right? And I carry my faith in how I look. So my friends were like, I thought you were Indian, so don't you celebrate Deepavali? If you're Indian, why are you wearing a headscarf? And And these are questions of genuine interest, and they were like confused, and it just really made me question, hey, didn't we all go through the same like social studies in school?
Yeah.
Didn't we all celebrate Racial Harmony Day? And how come is that at university level you don't know what's the difference between race and religion, right? So, but I think things are better now. But 10 years ago, I would say even I had friends asking me these questions. So that was the first stage, right? University. And then when I started working again, I was working in an MNC, and I was again visibly a minority. And I have never felt that way growing up, but the moment you are in that space, I started to feel more self-conscious of myself. And a lot of corporates, that advocate for DEI, right? Diversity and inclusion. I also noticed that their agenda is always on gender or disabilities. It's never really on interfaith or ethnicities kind of approach. So that made me feel like I couldn't bring my authentic self to work, where I can be who I am, still practice my faith while being in a circular environment. So I think all these experiences combined really made me feel more passionate towards this cause that, okay, there is something that we need to do to create spaces where young people can bring their authentic selves to circular spaces. So I think that feeling of empowerment is what I really wanted to provide to our younger generation, and that made me more passionate towards this cause as well.
When you was talking about your uni experience, I didn't know that it was still happening in uni because I remember I went through it, but it was in secondary school. My Chinese friends were saying how, oh, you're my first Malay friend, and we were like 12 or 13 at that point.
Right.
But I guess that's the nature of like schools, like SAP schools
Yeah.
maybe. So since have been talking a lot about like challenges and like starting points, what is like one moment in like this journey or interface that has been very rewarding?
For me, there have been many, but maybe I will just share one recent one that happened a couple of months ago. Well, we were giving out roses at Toa Payoh. I remember in the morning of like 10 a.m. and she approached this lady who was walking to the MRT station and who was looking visibly a bit dull, right? And she gave her a rose that was attached to that interfaith message, and the lady just broke down.
Oh.
And she told this 17-year-old girl who was just volunteering that I'm actually on my way to the hospital to get my hand amputated. And I'm going alone, and you giving me this rose made me feel like God was looking after me, and there is humanity, and there's people looking after me. And she gave that girl a hug, and just witnessing that was just so rewarding to know that so many people think that what can you achieve by giving out a simple rose, but that is the moment I realized that even that simple symbolic gesture can mean so much to someone. And that truly it was really a very rewarding moment at that point in time.
Thank you for sharing that. I think if we haven't been in the space and if we don't witness like these things, I think it's very hard to empathize like what can like such a simple act do. Okay. How about Natasha?
Okay, so there have been several, but I think, okay, so one particular like group of incidences, I guess, that would be relevant here, is when I was teaching my community choir music from the Arab world. So there are two songs. The one of them is actually El Helwadi, which basically, if you've been to an Arab wedding, especially an Egyptian wedding and all that, it's like da 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 da, and everybody dancing and all that. And they were like, they looked at it, they looked at me just like, hey, there's music from the Arab world. I said, yes, there's music from the Arab world. There's choral music from the Arab world. Yes, there's choral music in the Arab world. Oh, what does it sound like? I said, well, we'll find out. And then as we learned the music, and I told them about the context of, how this is a celebratory song, it's done in weddings, people usually come up and dance and all that. It's like, oh, people dance in weddings. I said, yes. So there's this whole layer and layer of, I really didn't know that the world exists. And then to kind of peel it a bit by bit. And like many of us have experienced, some of our friends never have had an opportunity to actually have an Arab or a Malay or an Indian friend. And the context of the community choir, this is the first time they actually had a edifying interaction with people from other races. For them to kind of own the music that they do, in so much as they appreciate the cultural space where it comes from, for them to be able to talk to someone outside the choir to say, oh, there's a cultural world out there that we don't know. And I think that to me is wonderful. And I think this is the way we kind of push the envelope a little slowly, in a sense whereby, so now you know better, you can do better. Hashtag Maya Angelou. Yeah.
Like, people are curious, right? But then, like, there's a fine line between being curious and being like, for example, when you ask about Islam things, and then people get annoyed by it, like, you know, there are certain reactions like that. So, like,
No, I hear what you're saying. Maybe I'll just kind of add a bit of a vignette.
yes.
As a child, I was very precocious, very curious. So this was like, I was like 5, I think. And I was very close to my Chinese neighbor. And they were Taoist, Buddhist, and all that. And then I'm very close to the grandmother. And then one of these days, I saw her downstairs, you know, and then she was crouching and she was doing something. So I was like, what's auntie doing? So I go down. Then I said, auntie, apa ni? What this? Pek Kim. Oh, do what? Show you. Then she take the, you know, the burnt offerings, and then she do this. And I was like, oh, I also want to try. So I was also sitting down, crouching beside her, doing this. Then my grandmother saw me from the top. Hey, Satan, balik! I wasn't even thinking of the religious context and all that, but she was doing something that was, to me, interesting.
Yeah.
You know, there's this natural curiosity that many of us have. And then sometimes it's filtered by social mores with regard to, oh, you know, we need to keep religion separate. We need to be respectful but also distance ourselves. And I think, in a way, to me, herein lies the problem. That the fact that the social systems that we have, this allows us from creating a vocabulary to talk about how do we better understand each other. And I think this is where we kind of need to start to, because sometimes, like you say, the irritation, just like, why are you asking me these questions, which I thought was so obvious. Kan? And then there are parts of us, and I think this needs to be nuanced carefully too. Some of us may feel that we may not be equipped to be able to articulate the rationales too, because there's a sacredness there. And we don't want to say something that might be contrary to the religious teachings. And then on the other hand, it's like, hey, AI is here, Google is here. Both these things in the spectrum is about the absence of the vocabulary, the ability for us to kind of engage genuinely in a language that is respectful, that is also nurturing and educative. So that's where, in a way, I struggle personally, and my organization also tries to think about. And, you know, this is the thing that where I appreciate a lot of the other interfaith groups and all that, because they are trying to do that. They're trying to build the vocabulary by, hey, I'm doing this sharing about my faith, and this is what's about. And often enough, it's only the people who are in the circle of the interfaith who want to go, and it doesn't engage beyond that. Where I see the sort of unique selling point, the USP of Vox, is because we've always threaded on the circular spaces of people who are actually not very religious, but are culturally inquisitive. So that's where we kind of hook them, in the sense whereby we're giving you a whole buffet of different faiths, different cultures and all that. I think the work is beyond just one organization. It is the whole of society approach to say, let us spend the time to get to know our neighbors better.
That perfectly encapsulated my half question. I think where I'm coming from that question is based on my personal experience. Like, I have a close friend who is Christian. There was one period where she was very interested in, like, knowing more about Islam, but it was also to, like, strengthen her Christian faith. So she was asking me, like, these very difficult questions. Okay, I thought they were difficult. I don't know whether other people thought it was difficult, but I found myself getting very defensive over like when I was answering, because it felt like I didn't know enough, and I was trying to lead her to a more like learned source. But yeah, I think the defensiveness is something that I was like struggling with, because she's coming from a place of curiosity. Yeah. So yeah, like you say, like whole of society approach, we need to form the vocabulary to engage with these conversations. So maybe I should come to like one of the
Yes.
No, but just to add on as well, I think I completely agree with what Shah mentioned, right? The vocabulary is one, and actually I would also say I've been in a similar situation as you as well, where people may be just genuinely curious, but sometimes it gets a bit uncomfortable for us being on the receiving end. That's another thing that Roses of Peace does a lot, is on unconscious bias, in helping you become more aware of the thoughts that you have. What are your trigger points that would cause that discomfort, that defensiveness, right? We talk about that, we navigate these situations together and all of that.
Can I just also add? I'm being slightly facetious here. The advantage of having a PhD is you don't know a lot of things. And sometimes when someone asks me a thing about, for example, about Islam, I'm just like, okay, I don't know. We want to find out together. And that sort of attitude, that mind shift whereby I'm not meant to be the repository of all things Islamic. That's not my area of expertise. But I'm willing to find out. And if the person engages me in good faith and wanting to know, and all that, and and to be able to say I don't know. I know people who know. Would you like to find out? We can find out together. It's actually very powerful also. Because it kind of gear shifts the old impetus of I'm not the defender of the faith. Rather, I'm a practitioner. I may not necessarily know all the things. And we need to acknowledge the fact that when we are comfortable with when we say we don't know, and we are happy to find out, I think a lot of the stress actually goes away.
So we move on to like a more like discourse-ish question. So Singapore is often praised for its racial and religious harmony. So do you find that this sometimes creates a false sense of security when it comes to like interfaith work? Like, do you think we take it for granted?
I do think, yes, to some extent we do take it for granted, because I think Singapore is also one of the countries that, mandates, right, there are policies, there's laws that governs racial harmony, religious harmony, and we know that if you do anything wrong, yes, if you cross the boundaries, you may be held liable, right? And as a result of that, I think that, okay, the government is taking care of it, so now what, right? So as individuals, I don't think many of us don't take that responsibility on us to then be advocates of peace, or advocates of interfaith harmony. So I think a lot of those interactions sometimes tend to be not about interfaith at all, right? It's just about, it happens to be a byproduct of other things that we do, right? And many of us don't realize that as well, right? So I think because many of us have the mentality that, okay, the government is there, it will take care of it. Ordinary people tend to take it for granted. I think that's my impression of it.
Okay.
Well, I think not dissimilar, but what we should actually have the mindset is that our interfaith, our interracial harmony is a work in progress. That we need to continually look at it, improve it, and to kind of see it from the vantage point of what's happening in Singapore and around the world as well. We've done a lot of good. When I say we, I mean it's also in conjunction with the individuals, the families, the communities, society, whole of government. We've done a lot of things that are good. And there are things that we can do better. So I think what we need to do is, yes, we should never take for granted our racial and religious harmonies. We should take ownership of our racial and religious harmonies and not wait passively to say, oh, we'll wait for government to move and then we all move. The government works with society to kind of maintain this equilibrium of what we want. And there's a lot of things for us to learn from our neighbors as well. The different manifestations of Pancasila in Indonesia, for example, is wonderful. The sort of the inter-community work in Thailand, for example, the Muslim communities with the Buddhist communities is also another wonderful resource that we are not fully conscious of, yet they do wonderful work, right? Right. So at the end of the day, we have done good. We could do better, and we should be open in learning how other people do it, and maybe we can incorporate some of these into our own practices.
So from your observations, do you think like Singaporeans are really truly comfortable in engaging with people of different faiths and cultures, or is there still this level of like politeness that prevents them from doing so?
I mean, I would echo what Dr. Shahril mentioned, right? That it is a work in progress for sure, and there are various segments of the community doing their own, type of activities to foster that. Sorry, excuse me. But I would say generally, still at the politeness level, right? We keep it at, hey, happy Deepavali, and that's it, right? I'm not gonna, most of us at least, it's not gonna ask about, so what are you gonna do for Deepavali, right? We stop at that wish, right? And so I think generally for the vast majority of us, it's still at the politeness level. And I still also acknowledge the fact that it is a work in progress for many of us. And yeah.
So interesting enough, there are two aspects here. One, that it is also dependent on class lines as well. As you know, there are some of our friends from SAP schools who not have an opportunity to engage with someone from a different ethnicity, and only in university suddenly, wow, who are you? You know, to no fault of their own, right? To no fault of their own, and sometimes they live in enclaves whereby it's majority, you know, of a certain certain majority race, right? There's the other side to this that we kind of need to be conscious of as well. And this is a project that Vox Camerata is doing with the support of the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth. In 2023, 1 in 5 marriages, sorry, 2 out of 5 marriages are interethnic. Almost half of the marriages are interreligious. So we are seeing this demographic shift of mixed marriages, hybrid cultures coming to the fore. And interestingly enough, all is not necessarily, you know, well in that front too, because they are also working against cultural biases of their generation before them, their parents, their older relatives, and all that. And what Vox has discovered is the work that they need to do as a couple sometimes is confounded by the fact that their families may not be necessarily receptive to someone of a different ethnicity or a different religion. And what we need to do as a society is to kind of hold space for these couples and these families. How can we better support them? How can we kind of like have this discourse of understanding that the fact that it is an epochal shift for either one or both of the couples, and there's going to be a generation of children who are mixed ethnicities, which comes with a whole plethora of either you celebrate all the holidays or you don't celebrate any holidays. So this is where we as a society, in terms of growing in its maturity, to understand hybridity. How can we help you? How can we support you? How can we make you feel that you belong to Singapore?
Very interesting. Like, I think that's something that we really have to think about in the future. Actually, we have like one question from the audience. We asked our Instagram followers whether they have any questions for either of you, and we received a question that was, how does one reconcile interfaith work with salvational beliefs? If I could reword it for our asker, I think there are certain religions that believe that if you are not from the particular religion, you are condemned. So how do you reconcile interfaith with like what people believe?
Your own
With that
personal
particular,
beliefs,
yeah, correct. With that particular belief.
You let Dr. Shati first. From a philosophy, he has a doctor
Bus
of
driver.
philosophy, right?
Okay, maybe. Okay, this is a very complex question, and I will forefront that it's a thing that I am trying to kind of make peace with as well, because my family is very conservative, and sometimes it's like when I practice, and I see this a bit facetiously also, like I'm trying to learn like music, especially like Italian arias and all that, and then my mother will come in and she'll look at me just like, Hari Hari Melalat Jesus, Hari Hari Melalat Jesus. I was just like, first of all, this is Italian, and it's nothing religious about this. In fact, it's quite raunchy, yeah? But that's the thing, right? Because sometimes it's like you feel. Some people might feel that the minute you do interfaith work, there's an erosion of faith. But for me personally, I feel that it strengthens my faith. What has the teachings of the Prophet has done, to inculcate us to do, it's just like we need to be kind to our neighbors. We need to profess love.
Yep.
There's a duty to care for society, even to those who do not believe.
Yep.
And even if you kind of do the exegesis of the Quran itself makes provisions for people who do not believe but will still enter heaven. So there is scriptural evidence to the fact that there's a hierarchy of goodness, right? That we may not necessarily be privy to, because only God knows. Only God will decide who gets into heaven. But I'm not one to judge whether you go to heaven. I have doubts whether I will go to heaven, but that will not stop me from being a good person. So from the theological sort of perspective too, I'm more interested in these commonality discourse too. Like I tell my friends, especially in terms of the idea of tensions within the Abrahamic faith and all that. And I say, one thing that people don't realize, that Islam, we have not just one holy book, we have many holy books. The Talmud, the Zabur, the Injil, these are also parts of our spiritual genealogy that we acknowledge. In the Quran also acknowledges these books. And it's important for us to do so, because we need to understand where we come from, but we also need to understand that there's a commonality there, that we are in spirit brethren. We are brothers and sisters. So I know there are scholars who do a lot of the eschatological work that, like, okay, actually there's the commonality of religions, which is actually kind of bounded by what we deem is human good. That's the philosophical part of it too. But what I am interested in is being good to my neighbor, being able to articulate and practice love, to bring people together, and to provide comfort also. Because sometimes where arts and music, performing arts is concerned, we fill the void. I'm saying this whereby it's like, it may not necessarily be congruent to how you feel salvation is. And I'm not saying this to be antagonistic. But for me, the work I do is predicated on my belief that I want to do my best to do good for society.
Yep.
And that is a tenet of my faith.
Do you have any input on the question?
No, actually, as he was talking, just before he started talking, I was thinking of what Prophet Muhammad would have said, right? And I think he touched upon it, that it is about, it's a faith tenet, right? That even if your neighbors are not kind to you, you still be kind, right? That is what my faith has taught me. So
Yes.
doing interfaith does not mean that I am giving up a part of myself or part of my faith. It is in fact faith, right? So I think doing interfaith is part of your faith. I think that's the reflection that I echo. Yeah.
And I think when you said finding commonalities, I think there are a lot of overlapping commonalities between like different religions. These are like universal like values or morals that we all follow, but we just maybe name it differently in different religions.
Yeah, I just want to add that actually when you're doing interfaith, it doesn't mean that I am promoting a certain faith. I think that is also a mindset or a misconception people may have, that doing interfaith doesn't mean that I am going to promote Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism. It is actually about creating that space for us to find that commonalities, right? To find us, to understand that after all, we're all human. We all have our differences, but we have that space to come together, to understand each other. I think that mindset or that misconception needs to be also addressed when you are part of the interfaith work as well.
So, I mean, in your years of being in this space, have you observed any like developments over the years?
I think yes, certainly. From 2012 up till now, I think there's certainly more organizations in this space doing a lot of good work. Meeting different segments of the community at different levels. That is one. I also feel that there is more spaces for our people to come together. In fact, this year we had ICCS, right, the International Conference of Cohesive Societies, and it happened for the third year. And really, even Singapore trying to position itself as a leader in this aspect as well. So I think we have made a lot of progress as a community. We are a role model for many people out there as well, and there have been certainly a lot of progress in this space. But again, it's never enough, right? It's always a work in progress, and we can always learn from our neighbors as well. So it is heartening to see the direction it's heading, but at the same time, the world is such a scary place today, right? And no matter how much programs or interventions or safe spaces that you have, it's never enough. So being in this space, sometimes I always wonder, why am I doing this work if I'm not able to change all that's happening around me. And that, I mean, I hate to admit that, but that is part and parcel of the work. And I think that is why this makes it even more important that you need to continue doing what you are doing, so that, you know, while these things are happening, we still, you know, strengthen our unity. And it starts with me, right? I think that's the mindset and approach I have as well.
From you mentioned you attended ICCS, right? Any takeaways from, is it a 3-day conference?
It's a 3-day conference, and then there is a 2-day conference for youth as well, called the
separately.
Youth Leaders
YLP.
Program,
Yeah.
YLP.
Okay.
Yeah. Certainly, I think my biggest takeaway was really about how there are different. I learned about polarities in one of the sessions, right? So it was really interesting because, you know, it is actually a management theory where you may have two different opposites, and it's not really about meeting the middle ground, but these opposites will always exist, right? And you just have to manage it effectively. And sometimes you are just going between these two polarities, and you have to manage them. And I think about it in the perspective of interfaith work, that it is true, right? Sometimes we have the polarity of cohesion versus conflict, right? And how do I balance between these two? So it's a balancing act. I think that was a key takeaway that I had, that I'm actually trying to solve things all the time, but sometimes certain things are not meant to be solved, right? It's just meant to live with it, but learn to manage it effectively. I think that was definitely one of my biggest takeaway from ICCS. There were many good takeaways, but this is one that stayed. Yeah.
You sounded like you had something to add about.
Oh, other than the fact that the food was lovely, very, very lovely. I appreciated the opportunity to meet with like-minded individuals from Singapore and around the world. I think one of the things that came out of ICCS that I thought would be I'm still trying to kind of figure out is, if we want to start thinking of future-proofing our society, what does it really look like in the age of AI? You know, the AI is now becoming a tool for radicalization, and how do we catch up with that? I think one of the things that we kind of need to do is understanding how do we build quality human relationships. And the quality human relationships kind of tie us together, but also anchors us in a way where people who have doubts about religiosity and all that, we talk to people rather than talking to machines. And the conversation that I have with people such as Maping from the Baha'i Assembly, people from the Hindu Youth Network, it's like, okay, we are collectively facing these challenges. Instead of working in our own silos, what can we do together? And our orientation should be outward facing, not to the converted, but to the people who are outside, who never had the chance to kind of had these experiences.
Okay, so you touched on a very important question that I was going to ask, which was, what do you think the future of interfaith will look like, and what do you want it to look like, right? So you've answered it a little bit, but would you like to answer that question?
Well, firstly, I want to start by saying the future is so uncertain, right? And he touched upon AI, for example, and 10 years later, I don't know what's going to be here, right? So I think what I would like the future of interfaith to look like is where we have a space where we are all learning together, right? Learning about each other, and regardless of what the uncertainties or how scary the world might be in the future, is to always keep your biases in check, right? And keep your mind and heart open. I think that is key, no matter. And I wouldn't say this is what I wanted the interfaith scene to look like, but I would hope this is what every individual would aspire to be, so that regardless of these circumstances around us that is beyond our control, things that are in our control is how we approach it.
Anything to add?
I think for me, we need to kind of like expand our paradigms. That when one talks about the interfaith, it's always centered on the core religions in Singapore. But the absence of the people who are in the margins, the people who don't actually profess a organized religion, or people who are agnostic, they should also be included in the interfaith conversations. One of the things that I thought might be good for us to also talk about the disenchantment of religiosity. We have the younger population who are so disenchanted with organized religions, where I feel that the work of the interfaith also needs to kind of like expand this conversation about the separation between the spiritual, religious, aspect of the individual and the organized faith. What I would love to see also is, and this is a kind of a personal aspiration for mine too, that we make space for younger people. We make space for especially women who don't really actually, I mean, some of them are there, but there's not enough of them. There's not enough avenues and spaces where we hear women's voices. And I think we need to make space for that to happen. I know some of the organizations are kind of doing that. Like, for example, I know the Central Sikh board made space for more women to be on their board, which is wonderful. And I'm hoping that different organizations also do the same. Yeah.
Okay. What would it take to create truly safe spaces in Singapore for disagreement and critical dialogue across religious or cultural lines?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of truly safe is predicated on the individual construct of safety.
Okay.
Right. We're talking about what? Economical safety, spiritual safety, identity safety. Because you answered it. So safety is multifaceted. Okay, and I kind of put this as a terrible thought experiment. Kan. To say that safety is you being able to express your opinion without, without being censured and all that. But if you profess an opinion that is really contrary to the safety of others, should you be given space to do so? I think one thing that we need to start though is being able to talk about differences without it being personal. And the whole nature of discourse and argument is not so much that you convince the other person that you are right, but you be able to be given the opportunity to articulate your position and to argue it fully. And for the other person to be able to at least understand what you're arguing. You may not necessarily agree to the argument, but at least to understand where the argument comes from.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to add that actually this space already exists, and there are good organizations that are creating these safe spaces, right? And just want to highlight one thing is I think what we need to do in these safe spaces is to have that controversy with civility, right? I think a lot of us talk about I agree to disagree.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like that is where the growth stops, right? Like, okay, I agree with what you say, I agree with what you say. Okay, but I disagree, and then that's it, right? I'm not going to do anything about it. But this is where I think, at least at Roses of Peace, we try to advocate for controversy with civility, where in a safe space, if I'm on a table doing an experiential conversation where we are talking about some of our most, sensitive or, vulnerable stories, right? And I disagree with your sharing, but how can I then try to achieve some sort of a common ground, right? I think that controversy with civility is what we need to inculcate in these safe spaces. And I think ensuring that he spoke about the various dimensions of safety, right? I think one key element is psychological safety, right? Where when you come in, you feel safe to talk about your lived experiences. And it is important that organizations or communities that are creating these safe spaces also establish some kind of rules or structure so that we can. The thing is, that's the thing about this space, right? It is best if it can happen authentically, but sometimes you just have to structure it until it becomes natural at some point. Right? Idealistically, it becomes natural at some point. So I think we are still at a phase where we are structuring these safe spaces, and it is important to some extent so that the psychological safety and controversy with civility happens hopefully naturally over time.
What's next for each of your organizations?
For Roses of Peace, at least, it is to continue to do more work in terms of how we get those who are not on the table to be on the table, really. I think that is the hardest part of our work. Those who are already here is, again, creating the ecosystem for our volunteers. By the way, we are a fully volunteer-run organization, so we do not have an office space, we don't have employees, it's a completely volunteer-run organization. So it is critical for us to continue to inspire youths to be a part of our mission. And I think that's also the beauty of it, where youths who are part of our programs continue to also create their own initiatives or create ripple effects in their institutes of higher learning, create a project in school. So I think creating that robust ecosystem is what is next for us, on top of inviting more people on the table, regardless of gender, race, even intergenerational conversations. I think that is what we are looking at.
We are in the thick of the the Intersections Project, where we take a look at the lives of biracial and bireligious couples. We're going to have an exhibition in November, on the 26th to the 30th of November, where we can showcase the things that we've discovered. It's a gallery walk. We have a gallery, and then we have an audio guide. We'll also have performances. And we're going to also hold an unconference on the 30th of November, where we bring people, community leaders, people who are interested, to come together to co-create toolkits of how can we, as Singapore society, better support biracial and bireligious couples. So this is this year. Next year is a brand mystery. But what we want to do, hopefully, is to continue working with the partners that we have, especially the Baha'i Assembly. We also are working closely with Cerita Garavan Serai, Hindu Youth Network, Every Child at SG. So we're engaging all this multitude of NGOs and interest groups that are both within the interfaith space and outside the interfaith space.
On that note, this is our last question. For those who are unsure how to get into the interfaith space or how to get involved, what would you say to them?
I just want to say for the younger generation at least, right? I feel that the moment we ask this question, how to get involved, the usual answer I hear is, maybe be more open, visit places of worship, say hi to your neighbor. But let's face it, right? Like, how many of us wake up today and say, today I'm going to say hi to my neighbor, right? We don't do that. So my first advice would be to diversify your social media feed, right? Diversify the content that you consume. And we all, especially the younger generation, lives chronically online, right? And any information, we don't go to Straits Times. We go to TikTok, Instagram to get our information. So my advice would be, for those who are shy and do not know where to start, right, is to diversify your social media feed. And those who are interested and want to do more, I think that is where you do your research on the kind of organizations that resonate with you and with your purpose. And reach out, drop an email, and get to know us, and we'll be more than happy to engage. So I think that would be my advice.
That's a very practical thing, because I don't think I would like knock on my neighbor's door and like say hello.
Yeah. Just to kind of build on to this, so the organizations that if you're interested in, like other than Roses of Peace, which does a fantastic job, by the way, there's also Hope Initiative Alliance, HIA. There's also Hash Peace that do a lot of youth work and all that. Can I also say that this is not just for the youth, it's for everybody. And can I also say that everybody has a powerful story in them that can be the catalyst of change. So don't think that you're not exceptional, or I cannot do this because, I'm nobody and all that. No, you are somebody. Go and to say, go here, do your research is a bit susah lah, because you don't know what you don't know, right? I don't think there's a registry for all these people who do interfaith work or intercultural work and all that. If you're interested in some of these things, maybe a good place to start is also the Harmony Circles. This is run by MCCY. Then there are other independent works. There are faith-based groups that does this. There's also the non-faith-based groups, like, for example, Vox Camerata, that also does this. So in a way, at least start with knowing what you want, and then go and Google the arts interfaith or sewing interfaith. Flowers, roses interfaith.
I've seen climate interfaith.
Climate interfaith too. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So with that, that's a wrap. We hope that the conversation gave you some insight into the role of interfaith advocacy and how building bridges across religious lines can be both powerful and necessary. As with the rest of the series, our goal is to recognize advocacy in different spaces and understand the lived experiences behind them and reflect on what makes advocacy effective in Singapore today. So if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to check out our other earlier ones in this series, which was the webinar, and stay tuned for more. And a big thank you to both our guests for being so generous with your time and stories and insights. And of course, thank you for listening. Till next time, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.